Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. We apologize for the tight space, but actually this is very exciting to see so many people. It's a testament to the vitality of CREES and Slavic languages and literature. My name is Nikola Tesla. I'm director of the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies. And today I'm very pleased and honored to introduce our distinguished speaker. But before I do so, I'd like to thank the Slavic Languages and Literatures Department for co-sponsoring this event. And especially McKenna Marco. Is she here? No? Okay, well, you can tell her I thanked her for actually first putting us in touch with Dubravka Ugrešić. She's the one who first initiated this series of events, and we're very grateful for her intervention. Dubravka Ugrešić is one of Europe's most distinctive novelists and essayists. She completed degrees in comparative and Russian literature and worked for many years at the University of Zagreb's Institute for Theory and Literature. So one aspect of her output or writing is actually scholarship, but she's also very well versed in fiction and essays. When war broke out in Yugoslavia in 1991, she took a very firm anti-war stance, critically dissecting Croatian and Serbian nationalisms, and she became a target and the object of media harassment and left Croatia in 1993. She has written on a variety of topics, from her Yugoslav homeland to the fall of the Berlin Wall, to popular and literary cultures and analyses of those. Her books have been translated in over 20 languages, and she was awarded several major literary prizes. I will name just a few: the Austrian State Prize for European Literature in 1998, the Jean Améry Essay Prize for her essayistic work as a whole in 2012, and the Neustadt International Prize for Literature in 2016. And today she'll be speaking about migration and the invisible people of Europe. And we're especially happy to have her speak on this topic because that's part of a lecture series we have this fall and winter on migrations and multiculturalism in Europe. So we're extremely pleased to have you here. We look forward to hearing your lecture and to having the discussion afterwards. So please join me in welcoming Dubravka Ugrešić.
Thank you all for coming and for inviting me to say a few words. I forgot my scholarly language. I'm a former scholar, so what I'm going to do is not going to be a proper lecture, but more on an essay side. I hope you will forgive me that. And also, I'm going to read, because that's how I feel more secure, I mean, with my English language. So about Invisible Europe. I'm not one to pay attention to dreams, but this dream, I remembered, jotted it down, and have been carrying it with me like a mental baggage I can't seem to shed for a quarter of a century now. The doorbell rings at my Zagreb apartment. I open the door and the people I've never seen before come pouring in. Who are you? How dare you barge without my say-so? I shout. This is my apartment. A woman, meanwhile, is changing her baby's diaper on my bed. A man goes into my bathroom. Hey, that's my bathroom. Somebody opened the fridge and begins taking out food. How dare you? That's my refrigerator. I fume and threaten. I'll call the police, but they don't hear me. I'm invisible to them. My apartment fills with people and nothing seems to stop them. How can so many of them fit in here? As if they're a deck of cards instead of people, I think in my dream. A few months after I dreamed this, war broke out in my country, Yugoslavia. Tens of thousands of refugees dispersed across the globe, and some even found their way to Afghanistan. With a brand new, only just valid passport from the newly minted state of Croatia, I left my country. Or I should say that my country left me. I know now that the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of refugees who are knocking on the doors of the European countries did not leave their countries. Their countries left them. No matter how we call them, guided by the etiquette of political correctness, whether emigrants of emigres, migrants, refugees, exiles, or asylum seekers, we all know whom we are talking about. This is our shared cultural mem. European Christian civilization began with people seeking refuge. We have all internalized the image of God, banishing Adam and Eve from paradise, waging his rage-filled index finger. This image is a part of our lasting cultural legacy. Do you all hear? Should I put this mic or not? Yes? I think I should. Okay. I forgot about that. I was instructed to do that, but then. Okay. Okay. This image is part of our lasting cultural legacy. I set out into the world when the then president of Croatia, with the same godly ease and menacing index finger, announced he was the Croatian George Washington and declared Croatia to be heaven on earth. Today, when I watch jihadist video messages, I note that they are ever ready to wag that index finger. Wielding it like a sword, they threaten those who refuse to obey with horrible punishment. We all have refugees as a part of our mental vocabulary. The notions of expulsion, exodus, exile are woven into the very foundation of our civilization and personal lives. Yet we tend to close our eyes to the numbers. At the end of 2014, some 60 million people had been displaced, the most since World War II. The images of dead bodies washing up on the shores of Italy, Spain, and Greece, to the scenes from refugee ghettos to the geographical site, the island of Lampedusa, one of the symbolic topoi of the migration crisis. While we are closing our eyes, migrants are finding ways through using superhuman strength and tenacity. According to a report by the Norwegian government, in November of 2015, more than 4,000 migrants crossed the narrow Norwegian-Russian border thereby opening a new and unexpected Arctic route. Russian law forbids traversing the last dozen miles on foot, so they covered those last miles riding children's bicycles over the frozen wastes. Perhaps some of them riding bicycles warmed themselves up with a vision of the lights of Paris, unaware that at that very moment, on November 13, 2015, terrorists had turned Paris into a place of bloodshed, violence, and fear. Reality becomes fantasy at that point. Life is not a dream. Life is cinema, the Hunger Games. No doubt, many of my former countrymen, themselves refugees 20 or something years ago, and now law-abiding taxpayers in Western European countries, are dead set against the idea that the new wave of refugees will become their fellow citizens. The countries which stepped out from behind the Iron Curtain, such as Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania, have since then hastened to raise new barbed wire curtains, without a thought to the fact that a Hungarian, Romanian, or Bulgarian child, not just a Syrian child, could become entangled in the wire. Countries like Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia over the last several years have been treating refugees like tennis balls for their games of petty, local, embittered political tennis. Today, a large portion of the world is tightrope walking. It is difficult to say which side these tightrope walkers will fall on and whether they will fall at all. The landscape is not attractive. Down below are fields in which rolls of barbed wire and swastikas are growing, and the view on the other shore is murky at best. Nobody can guarantee that there isn't some crazed suicide bomber crouching there on the other well-lit shore. Nobody can tell yet whether tightrope walking is the new lifestyle, the new code, the new morals, the new politics. Terrorism is amoral, as Jean Baudrillard declared after September 11th. Have we, the citizens of the world, been so overcome by fear that we, too, have become amoral? Europe was herself a migrant, according to the myth. She was a daughter of a Phoenician king, born in the city of Tyre, in what is Lebanon today. And she reached Europe on the shoulders of her lover Zeus. So that's how she reached the shores of today's Europe. Reaching the other shore on a bull is every bit as spectacular as riding across the last dozen miles of ice on Charles' bike. Refugees and migrants serve as a mirror, a test, a challenge, a summons to confront our values. The events, some of them visible, others less so, which have followed since the migrant crisis was identified, are being added to the crossword puzzle. The people fleeing their countries are the beginning and end, the cause and effect. They are the deck of cards from which the near future of the world will be read. And whoever knows how to read these cards will know what lies ahead for us. I don't know when it was last that I first met Malina, a Bulgarian woman who cleans apartments in Amsterdam. All I remember is that she introduced herself as Meli. Meli isn't a Bulgarian name, is it? I asked. Well, not everyone who comes from Bulgaria is Bulgarian, she said cautiously. Meli's background was Bulgarian-Turkish. She was from a distant village somewhere in northeastern Bulgaria. Her parents apparently did little but have children, producing a brood of 17. There, 3 of them died, said Malina, and 14 of us are left. Carried away with their procreational enthusiasm, the parents seem to have failed to note that in communist Bulgaria, that had decent medical care, readily available contraception, and the right to abortion. Having spent his reproductive role, her father died like salmon do after spawning. Her mother, the queen bee, lives the life of a fertility goddess. Her children look after her and after one another, the older ones raising the younger ones. Malina and her 4 sisters were renting an apartment together in Amsterdam. They were all working as house cleaners, and all of them also had jobs at Albert Heijn, the largest and the best-known Dutch supermarket chain. Albert Heijn is such a powerful company that they put a supermarket up in the middle of Museum Square in Amsterdam, rubbing elbows with the cultural giants of the Van Gogh Museum, the Rijksmuseum, and the Stedelijk. The Albert Heijn supermarket is the 4th giant. It keeps an eye on the museum's visitors, passersby, and the people of the museum neighborhood, many having purchased a bottle of water and a sandwich at the Albert Heijn supermarket, recline on the supermarket's architecturally appealing, slanted, grassy roof. Meli and her sisters cleaned the supermarket twice a week, and they reported this part of their earnings to the Dutch tax collectors. Their regular payment of taxes would be key on the day when they went to the Dutch authorities to request Dutch citizenship. Meli arrived in the Netherlands at the age of 19. Now she's 28. She was born in the year the Berlin Wall fell. This detail meant something to me, but not to her. She works every day from morning till night and stops by my place when she can on Sundays. Meli barely has the 4th grade education. She never traveled around Bulgaria. She never been to Sofia, the closest being to Sofia airport, from where she flies to Amsterdam. She cycles through the streets of Amsterdam like a true Dutch woman. And when she stops by my place to visit, I often sit her down at my computer. We work on the basics, the names of the capital cities and countries of Europe. How can you not know? You need to know where you are situated in the world. I insist. She laughs. Her smile exposes a sharp tooth growing over another tooth. And you should go to the dentist, for God's sake, to have that tooth taken care of. She laughs again. She has no intention whatsoever of going to the dentist. Meliha and I speak Bulgarian. Her Bulgarian is not strong. Mine isn't much better. Mine was left behind somewhere in my childhood. I learned what I knew while I was visiting my grandparents, my mother's parents, who lived in Varna. With their death, our family vacations spent on the Black Sea also came to an end. Meliha has never been at Black Sea. Just like her sisters, she bought a house in her village and a small apartment in a nearby town. She rents out the apartment. Meliha is a successful young woman, especially if one considers what her chances for success were to begin with. She renovated her house following urban standards. Thanks to her ties to Bulgarian trucking, she managed to arrange to have all the furniture she had bought in Amsterdam delivered to her village. Everything is now brand spanking new in her house. I'll come to see this miracle for myself, I say. Come, she says and laughs. I'll come once you have put in a jacuzzi. She laughs. She has plans for a jacuzzi. Frank is a manual laborer. He ripped down walls in my apartment, removed all the rubble, and prepaid the apartment for the electricians, plumbers, and other tradespeople. He did it all in 3 days for a surprisingly modest wage. And over those 3 days, I learned that Frank was a son of Dutch Protestant minister, that he had been married, had no children, was well educated, and had a job, and then one day he abruptly decided to abandon it all. He closed his bank accounts, his tax numbers, his phone numbers. He deregistered his address and completely removed himself from the system. The jobs he did as manual laborer he found through people he knew. Frank's girlfriend's phone number was Frank's only contact point. I paid him with a pang of guilt. I felt he was charging too little for the job he had done. We said our goodbyes. For some reason, I thought I'd never see him again. With no forewarning, Frank showed up at my door some 15 years later. He joined me for coffee and we talked. In the meanwhile, he had bought a house in a distant mountain village somewhere in southern Bulgaria, near the border with Turkey. As his girlfriend is with him, and his girlfriend is with him, he helped the villagers build and repair their houses, and in return, the villagers teach him how to work the land, cultivate vegetables, set up beehives. So what are you doing in Amsterdam? I asked. His Dutch passport expired, and without a passport he couldn't travel. He was worried he might have difficulty renewing it because the Dutch authorities could no longer find a single item in his file but his birth certificate. to prove that he was a Dutch citizen. Frank had done far too thorough a job, apparently, at removing himself from the system. I hope Frank won't experience anything like the fate of the young Italian chauffeur in Gianni Amelio's moving film L'America, a young Italian man whose work happened to take him to transitional Albania had his passport confiscated by the police, whether by mistake or deliberately, and this forced him to climb up onto a ship with a mob of Albanians. The ship planned to unload its illegal human cargo, refugees, on the Italian coast, but in reality it failed. On the same ship there was a senile old Italian who had stayed on in Albania as an Italian soldier after World War II, and now thought he was en route to America. In reality, he, along with all the other illegal travelers, was returned to Albania. A Bulgarian woman in Netherlands, a Dutch man in Bulgaria. This is only one of the millions of similar stories of today's Europe. If there is anything truly relevant in the current inflation of intellectual narratives about European identity, a European future, the European crisis, Europe after the war, new European walls, then it should be the narrative of the magnificent, remarkable circulation of human material, human cargo, wars, murders, genocides, political systems, states and borders, ideological and religious systems, nationalisms. All this pales in comparison to the fates of ordinary people. Sure, if Frank had moved to Bulgaria during the communist years, maybe he wouldn't have needed a Dutch passport anymore. Maybe he'd never have been able to leave Bulgaria again. Sure, if Yugoslavia hadn't come apart at the seams, if a mob of brutal thugs elected by the democratic majority hadn't grabbed power, I wouldn't have ended up in Amsterdam. And I would never have made the acquaintance of Frank and Melly. Nor would Melly have ended up in Amsterdam if Bulgaria had not become a member of the European Union, followed by the transition and the state-run thievery that brought Bulgarian citizens to the verge of starvation. Melly is not in Amsterdam for the tourism. Melly is here to feed herself and her large family, which was brought into the world by her worry-free, childish parents. Whatever the case, the entire world relies for its existence on worry-free, childish parents. Meliha has an iPhone, most recently expensive model. She shows me pictures from weddings. Of her 10 sisters, she will soon be the only one who isn't married. The weddings are grand, expensive, with a long guest list and shimmering dresses. One of Meliha's sisters married a Turkish man in Istanbul. The wedding was colossal. They found a groom for Meliha as well, but he wasn't worth mention, a fool. And this other one, whose picture he shows me on the screen of her iPhone, handsome, muscular, with a modern haircut ending in a cowlick on his forehead. Now that one likes to be in charge, I say, touching his picture on the screen tentatively with 2 fingers as if it were a dead mouse. True, says Meliha. Meliha may be short of experience, but her eye ticks like a Swiss clock watch. Bulgarians, it should be said, have at times humiliated their Turks, the 2 million of them who were living in Bulgaria, compelling them to work the nastiest and the most poorly paid jobs, and to change their names and fate. Today, Bulgarian women dash off to Turkey, where they work as house cleaners, nannies and maids. The Turkish middle class is on the rise, they need of their services and is willing to pay. Bulgarian women do the same work in Istanbul as Meli does in Amsterdam, as Croatian, Serbian, Romanian and Albanian women do in Italy, as Slovakian women do in Austria, as Lithuanian women do in Switzerland, And while the European political bureaucracy spreads its wings in Brussels, and while prominent political thinkers feeling philosophical mortar now and then at the ideological construct of Europe, and while petty European fascists nestle into European commissions like lying hens, clucking loudly and every so often producing a serpent egg, and while in many transitional countries there is not so much as the letter D left of democracy, everyday European life continues to push in various directions, and on invisible cyber papyrus, millions of European human fates are being recorded. What happened with Meli was a miracle. She who had been so reticent simply because she had a vocabulary of barely 500 words, she whom I'd coached in European geography, she had learned to speak Dutch. I'd never have known she mastered it on the sly if Dutch friends of mine hadn't stopped by one Sunday when Meli was visiting. She conversed with them with real eloquence in Dutch. That Sunday, in the presence of my friends, it was hard to stop her. Meli's self-decolonization happened in language, through language, with the help of language. That is why I'm beginning to think she won't ever go back. Where can she go back to? A native language where the best she can do is stutter? You are giving me
You have
a little bit of time, okay. George Steiner, one of the last top-notch European intellectuals with a strong humanistic bent, in his oft-cited The Idea of Europe, published in 2004, enumerates 5 postulates defining Europe. The first are the cafes. as places for creating and exchanging intellectual values. Indeed, Europe is crisscrossed by cafes, which are a key part of the cultural and intellectual history of Europe. Take the Zürich Café, the Odeon, for instance. A glance at its clientele, which included Franz Werfel, Stefan Zweig, Frank Wedekind, Karl Kraus, William Somerset Maugham, Erich Maria Remarque, Klaus Mann, James Joyce, Hans Arp, Tristan Tzara, Hugo Ball, Franz Lehar, Arturo Toscanini, Albert Einstein, Vladimir Lenin, Ilich Lenin, and Leo Trotsky bears out George Steiner's assertion. The second postulate is geography, or vocability, a human scale. One can master the distances in European cities and countries on foot. The third postulate, which sets Europe apart from the other geographic constellations, is the constant commemoration of the cultural past, or reminders of it. Streets, squares, and buildings in European cities bear the names of major European writers, philosophers, painters, scientists, statesmen, reminding us of how everything is inwoven in European past and present. The fourth postulate on which depends the idea of Europe is interweaving of two parallel traditions of civilization, the dual origins of Europe, where, metaphorically put, one parent comes from the ancient Athens and the other from Jerusalem. The fifth postulate underpinning the idea of Europe and the European is a continual awareness of a possibility of possible end to European civilization. The presentiment of this end, the awareness of potential apocalypses. The presentiment of the end is not merely a subject for the rumination of philosophers such as Spengler and Hegel. It has its roots in the European experience of the two world wars, the Holocaust, and mass destruction. Hundreds of millions of people were killed in these wars. 6 million European Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Many parts of Europe were razed to the ground. The firm commitment never to let this happen again was flouted by the relative recent Yugoslav war from 1991 to 1995 or 1999, in which, as if the warning parties were following the textbook, many of the same things were repeated. The ethnic cleansing, destruction, expulsion, genocide, Srebrenica, the camps, the forced resettlement, and the refugees. George Steiner, who senses the coming of the collapse of Europe, the incursion of the barbarians, and the fading of European idea, seeks a way out through cultural utopia, through dreaming a new dream of enlightenment, through focusing on things of little utility and on truths. I quote, "The dignity of Homo sapiens is exactly that, the realization of wisdom, the pursuit of disinterested knowledge, the creation of beauty. Making money and flooding our lives with increasingly trivialized material goods is profoundly vulgar, emptying passion. End of quote. Steiner condemns the despotism of the mass market and the rewards of commercialist stardom, end of quote, because of which the best mind of Europe are embracing, I quote, the Edenic, comes from Eden, offers of the United States. At the rare moments when Steiner lapses into a typical European lament, the readers might stop and recall just how much Europeans have gained from the idea of America, and how much America itself gained from the many emigres who came there from Europe. Perhaps there is a relevance in a story told by a guide on a tour boat on which I cruised around Manhattan a few years ago, about how eastern shoreline of Manhattan was fortified with the rubble transported from Europe during the Second World War, when the ships returning to United States after delivering aid to England would load rubble from the Blitz as the ballast necessary to stabilize the ship. Who knows? Maybe the eastern shoreline of Manhattan was built on rubble from Coventry Cathedral. Even if this story isn't true, the metaphor still holds. People didn't flock to America to save their lives, ensure a better future, or take advantage of Edenic offers, but for a set of ideas which America exemplified: the dream, the simple things of freedom, choice, tolerance. America is a land of settlers. It exists thanks to the people who settled there, who are settling there, and who will settle there. Millions of lives are built into American culture, into literature, architecture, movies, art, science, medicine, technology. Many of these people came from Europe. There is nothing sadder than a country whose borders are bristling with barbed wire, yet none of the refugees have any intention of staying there. Through Greece, Turkey, Serbia, Hungary, Croatia, and other countries, the refugees seek only passage. Bad countries are merely corridors, and the refugees know this better than anyone. During Yugoslavia, there were many factories, institutes, streets, and schools named after Nikola Tesla. Socialist propaganda expressed by the slogan, "Knowledge is power," rang out on all sides. Nikola Tesla was a living example that the Enlightenment sentiment espoused by communism was possible. During the recent war, in the monument to Tesla in Gospić was destroyed, along with the family home and museum. Until recently, the home where Tesla grew up in Smiljan was surrounded by minefields, but now it has been rebuilt and made into a museum for tourists, of course. The main square in Gospić used to be called Nikola Tesla Square. Today it is Stjepan Radić Square. Many of the squares and streets in Croatia, bearing the name of Franjo Tuđman, a third-rate politician and the first president of the Republic of Croatia. The new Zagreb airport is also named after Tuđman. Although he was born in Croatia, Nikola Tesla was ethnically a Serb, which is the main obstacle to his inclusion in the Croatian pantheon. In Serbia, many streets, squares, and schools, as well as the Belgrade airport, bear the name of Nikola Tesla. For Tesla, at least as far as the Serbs are concerned, was a Serb. In the United States, there is a statue to Nikola Tesla at Niagara Falls. I was recently there, and I bought a snowball with Nikola Tesla in it. Yugoslavia gave this copy of statue by Yugoslav sculptor Frane Kršinić as a gift to the United States. In New York, a corner of Bryant Park was recently named Nikola Tesla Corner. A statue has been installed on Long Island, at site significant for Tesla's scientific work. There are busts of Tesla at many American universities, including Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, Michigan, and MIT. This small and incomplete story about Tesla confirms the respect for education, science, invention, enlightenment, progress. Everything Tesla personified and which the culture of United States values far more than it is valued by the cultures from which Nikola Tesla came. Inclusively, a great idea that still attracts people to America. Walls and barbed wire will not prevent them from making the track drawn by the pool of ideas of a better, more humane, creative, and dignified life. Even if they arrive at their destination disappointed, stripped of rights, humiliated, they will do their best to make real the ideal they set out to attain. Maybe they will be invisible. Maybe they will not have the right to vote, but they will be those who will sustain life and human standards, the standards of the humane. Zero tolerance policy will sooner or later backfire on those who are advocating for it. It embitters the life of many who have lived here for generations. The true terror begins when we begin to feel there is nowhere left to emigrate to, that all destinations are equally bad. There remains hope for us that we haven't yet been faced with the last wall. We haven't, have we? Thank you.
We have time for discussion.
But you have to go. I didn't know I got 1 hour.
So we have time for questions, and Okay, yeah, we had an overflow room, so there's other people who are in a different room who are joining us.
Okay.
So please feel free to ask a question, and if you do, if you wouldn't mind just saying your name and perhaps your affiliation, your department, just so that our speaker knows who you are.
I know it's very difficult to have any question after that reading because, and besides, I'm not a specialist for, I don't know figures, I'm not, I don't work with the refugees, so these are stories from life, and me being a sort of privileged refugee.
Hi, my name's Dimitri, and
Yeah.
I'm in a Serbian class here. With all the talk of refugees right now, I think a lot of the pushback is sort of founded in nationalism, right? What do you think is sort of causing this like upbringing of nationalism, especially in like Yugoslavia and in old communist nations?
I don't know. I was thinking about that too, and then there is something which is base of every fascism or whatever you call it, and this is the biggest fear, and this is the fear of exclusion. And that fear of exclusion, it starts in a kindergarten. The child suffers if it is excluded, then in grammar school, then in high school. I mean, nerds suffer too because they're excluded. And there are many reasons for that exclusion. Not being like others, okay, like majority. So, the same happened, the same kind of manipulation is done to us by market, let's say. But nobody, I mean, this is the pleasant side of life, and we really do not care. Why do we insist to have the same shoes as other people have, or the same, although the whole our culture is based on personality and personal choice. So I have those talks with my little niece because she wants exactly the same, t-shirts like other girls in the school, the same haircut like the other girls have. And I said, but you look like other girls. And she says, no, this is my personal choice. So this is it, the fear of exclusion. So people rarely, there are rare people who not go with the stream. And that happened in Croatia, in Serbia, in Bosnia lately too, that each ethnical group goes with their kind of people. And of course politicians, this is the easiest way to manipulate people. Everybody wants to feel better than the others. I mean, gangs, street gangs, they function on that way. I mean, we are stronger, we are better, we are more beautiful. And then we come to this is my theory, why the world is dominated by white people. Because they are the ugliest. So, in order to do something about it.
Actually, it transitions nicely to my question. I was wondering, listening to you talk about it, you ascribe a lot to language and some with national identity passports. But then you, towards the end, just kind of drive it home with thinking about the U.S. And I just wondered how you see like race and ethnicity play into these the issue of race and ethnicity playing. I mean, you know, it's because
in America.
Well, in general, in this kind of ideas that you're presenting,
How
it seems like it wasn't
consider
as explicit. But I was wondering if that was, you know, when you bring it to the conversation in the U.S. I mean, our issues with immigration in the current state are highly tied to
I
race
think
and
that's
ethnicity.
exactly
But I think
what is
it's
happening in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, there are zillions of you know, invisible people in America. So no matter what politicians do, it won't last long, because this, especially in this country, because it is built and developed exactly on the opposite ideas, on the idea that everybody has right to come and settle his, her life of his, her family. And also, I mean, the results are visible, you know, because all the goodies, all the goods are exactly done by whom? By immigrants. Yeah, for that they had to kill a couple of, or to deprave a couple of, I don't know how many, Indians, but nobody was the first, basically, in this land. So this is extremely important, and Europeans, they claim that they were there forever. You know, this is a bit different. So probably we should remove all the Europeans, send them to American land, and then all American sent to Europe to learn the history lesson.
My name is Diljana. I'm from Yugoslavia. I'm Serbian descent, and my family moved here when I was a teenager. But I wanted to ask you about this idea of otherness and not being able to go back. You mentioned about your friend Melly, how she couldn't really go back and be what she was once before. How people of the diaspora, did they become kind of similar to each other? Refugees and immigrants, did they become, do you think, a group of similar, in some ways, like-mindedness? People who see things from the outside, people who see things in many ways more clearly, and are willing to look at things that people who look at culture only from the inside are unwilling or unable to see, who might be afraid to look at. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but I mean, countries are not isolated anymore, you know.
That's true.
Like, for instance, there were during this division, communist, capitalist world. So everything is information, everything is circulating. So you can't anymore, you know, really deal or mesmerize or manipulate people with this, you know, home and exile and domovina I tuđina.
But it's that understanding of being part of or looking at the culture and family and country from the outside. That's what I was talking about. More than, do you know what I'm getting at?
Well, I mean, what I
yes.
think you're talking about.
I'm a little bit deaf.
Two different things.
Okay.
There's one that's maybe ideological, and it's true that people have access to information, but perhaps with people who immigrate, regardless of the country,
That's
they
right.
immigrate from and to, you're kind of always in between. You're neither from there, or I'm from Canada and I feel that I'm not really from here, and I go there and I'm not from there anymore.
Exactly. You don't belong anywhere in a way.
But I don't think that's specific
But that's good,
to.
I think.
Yes,
This
I'm
is
not saying it's good or bad. It's just
damaging.
freeing, but also lonely.
Yeah.
But then you become an ethnographer in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you go back, you
Uh-huh.
see things perhaps that people who have never left don't see.
Right. It
But you know
frees you
what?
from becoming a
I will
nationalist.
tell you what is. I saw happy immigrants, and I saw them. I have a perfect example. Somebody from Brčko, a Muslim. His name is Bego, and he came to Manchester, New Hampshire. He told me when they got those visas, he told me, I thought that I'm going to Manchester United. You know. And suddenly I woke up in America. So he's a happy immigrant. He, after 5 years of working in the factory, because he's on a limar.
Welder.
Hmm?
Welder.
Welter?
Welder.
Okay.
Weld.
Okay, fine. So he bought a house in some area, very cheap, huge house, in an area which is no-go zone. I mean, a very poor area. And then he renovated it. He did a beautiful garden. He made a pond and a barbecue place. And he built gazebo, you know, beautiful gazebo, Oriental style, so that he and his old lady could sit there and enjoy. He also built a pond, which is quite unbelievable for a guy from Bosnia, with the golden fish there. And I was invited to some party which he prepared, and then the only thing he took from Bosnia with him to America was an old gramophone and old records. So exactly at midnight, so he plugged in this gramophone, and suddenly, I mean, that was that sirtaki, and he and his wife, they were dancing in this garden, sirtaki. So I think that he does that for the neighbors, because he's a like well-looking middle-aged man with gray hair, and probably somebody told him, "You look like Anthony Quinn in this movie." So he repeats that show. And I said, "So are you ever going to go to Brčko?" And he said, "No way, why should I?" And I said, "How? What do you mean?" And he said, "But all my people are here with me. His wife, his children, sister's wife, brothers, whatever, the whole family." So he really does not know anybody anymore in Brčko, and there is no any emotional, you know, thread which will get him back, because family is probably also one of very humane, and as soon as you have family, you're always going back. But I don't know, if you imagine that there is no one there, why should you go there? So.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm from the German department, and I'm curious. You mentioned the snow globe with Nikola Tesla, and it's in some of your texts. You also write about snow globes, and I'm wondering if you might say more about what it means to you. I admit I'm asking also because I don't trust all of the commentary that actually comes up in trying to interpret what you're doing with the snow globes, and I'm just wondering, could you say more about what it means to you, why you got one?
I get to pick out of them. Just,
all of them?
You know, all of them. Just no, not all of them. But it's I think that probably because I was, you know, I was born in 1949, and I wish I was born in 1941. the older you are, you have more authorities. So, so probably, I mean, my childhood was depraved of toys and beautiful things, and you know, and that's why my mother, she took me when I was a very small girl to the cinema. We watched Hollywood movies, and but no objects. I remember how she was desperate, trying to find some toys for me, and then she found this is the only thing she saw in the window, a huge wooden helicopter, and she gave it to me, but it was impossible. I mean, that was the dangerous thing. So I didn't need helicopter, and so probably, and I wrote a bit about that for the child. Like me, when there is nothing, what is beautiful? Does child have any aesthetic preferences? and then yes, something shiny, something sparkling, something a little miracle. Probably. That's why no, but I bought intentionally because I had that pride seeing this monument of Tesla there. So that's why I bought it.
Hi, I'm Aslam. I'm also from the German department. I noticed that when you were talking about the refugee crisis, you put it into quotation marks.
Yeah.
Speak up. Louder.
Yes.
A bit loud, sorry.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I noticed that you put the refugee crisis into quotation marks when you were talking about it earlier.
Because I can't stand. You asked me why, right?
No.
No?
I appreciate that. I'm just wondering what you think of the differentiation between the economic refugees and the other, the political, the real refugees, this whole discourse going on in Europe, especially in Germany, since 2000.
But it goes together. You know, you can't say that all those people leaving Croatia or Serbia, or less Serbia because of Croatia is part of European Union, so it is easy to cross the border and to travel and to settle in some other country. So those people, although they don't have political rhetoric, you know, and basically they're not in politics, they're not going only because of economical reasons, you know, or not at all. Because if the politics in Croatia, for instance, is okay, or in Bulgaria, Romania, or is okay, then those people would not emigrate. Why? For what? But obviously, everything is so rotten in those countries that people can't breathe. I mean, they don't have oxygen, first of all. And that's why they go to countries where they can find a job and a decent life and whatever.
I have another question as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder what you think, what the best, or in your opinion, the most suitable artistic way to represent such violences is. I noticed, for example, in one of your novels, The Museum of Unconditional Surrender, you don't depict violence as such, but you present fragments of lives without talking directly about violent scenes. Is this, can you elaborate more on this artistic approach?
Yes, I think that
representing?
First of all, I dealt with that theme long time ago because it was my theme, it was my life. I mean, I left the country. And what's going on now, because of that huge number of huge number, not sudden, but let's say lately that an enormous number of people, and don't forget that 60 million means only 1 million of them are knocking at the doors of Europe. So it's not so much comparing to the other countries. And then what I know the stories. People do help, ordinary people, they do help refugees. So state organizations, they don't do much. But people in the area where refugees are, okay? What artists do, and what really, I mean, annoys me, you know, suddenly you have this popular, you know, like art connecting with refugees suffering. So I met a sculptor, he showed me immediately like a sculpture he designed, and this is a man's figure with no head. Instead of head, he put luggage.
Yeah.
So this is really funny. Or what this husband of this Kim Kardashian does with the symbolic, I mean, you know, like sneakers and whatever he does, like fashion, refugees fashion, or you know, like I mean, this woman which leads Vanity Fair or whatever, Vogue, she tells that migrants are chic these days. I mean, in the terms of fashion, or I mean, writers, they immediately invented Miglit. You know what is that? Migration literature, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is, you know, those people, they don't need Miglit and sculptures representing them without the head. They have a luggage, but they need real stuff. They need passports. They need an opportunity to set their new lives.
One more.
I was reading the Museum Surrender of Unconditional Surrender with students last semester, and your essay on exile, so it's really wonderful to have you here. I have a question about your essay on exile. So at one point you say that there is no way where the author escapes their nation-state identity. That even if you are in exile, you're still being referred to as the Croatian author. And that's it. So I'm just wondering, is there any way, or how can we, or how do you escape and deal with the parameters, the confining parameters of nation states when you are writing in a state of exile?
I think this is the most rigid thing, and this is extremely difficult to avoid, you know, because people, not only local people, let's say in my case, Croats, you know, they don't like me. I mean, the majority does not like me. So, but nevertheless, they always pin me like a Croatian author. Okay, so the best I can get is Croatian author living in Amsterdam. Why shouldn't I be Dutch and Croatian? Besides, I mean, this is not, even if we follow the patterns of, you know, putting people in the shelves, then I'm not at all. I mean, you know, I'm a Yugoslav-born author. I'm not a Croatian-born author. And so on and so forth, you know. And who is that police who is, you know, peering into my DNA saying that I'm Croatian? Okay. Who wants that? Who does that? Or that I'm not Croatian? So literature is in that in that sense is pretty rigid, you know, because it is still divided into national literatures. Okay, so until we all, you, and others, until you don't build a different platform, you know, for talking about literature, we will still deal, you know, me Tarzan, you Jane, me Croat, you Serb. I'm opting for something which maybe terminology is not right, something like post-national or transnational or cross whatever cultural, but something which will allow us to avoid that ethnic labeling, which is really, you know, literature can't be ethnic. I mean, what does it mean, ethnic novel? I mean, what is that? I know that some people insist on that because they are caught in this, you know, that they are representatives, that old-fashioned story that you are representative of your nation, culture, whatever, which is simply bullshit. It's a mess, you know. But they can't think differently. I was reading newspapers today, and there is big news in Croatian newspapers that at Frankfurt Fair, which starts today, a Croatian author is going to talk with the president of Germany, and this is the biggest achievement of Croatian literature, that she's honored by German politician who would talk with her about freedom or whatever, you know. That's why they all interview, I mean, those politicians, which is their favorite book. And then they say Paulo Coelho, you know. And from the other hand, I mean, writers, they were supposed to feel pride because they talk to them or they take pictures with them. You know, it's an extremely, I would say, manipulative field.
Well, that's
now you're sorry because you missed the talk with the German president. I know you.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and talking with us.